Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy Chapter 125, Vidmori Point of View. A job. Now that I wasn't expecting. Well, I don't have any intentions of being tied down during this expedition. I can't say that I'm in a place where I could turn down a chance to make even more money. I'm only in town for the next 2 days, so I'm not doing anything long-term. But what are you thinking, and how much are you offering? I ask, making it clear that I'm willing to listen as I move to sit back on the couch again and act as if I'm relaxing. The fact that I was leaving so soon would take the winds out of Tilsom's sails a bit. But he picked himself back up quickly. 4 gold pieces, he said, as he first held up 3, then 4 fingers. I tilted my head a little, showing that I was still inclined to listen as I watched the dwarf intently. He gulped a little, as I could feel him gathering his thoughts. Our Crucible Master has been ill for the last few weeks, and we've fallen behind on orders for a certain kind of metal, he explained. He was clearly doing his best to set a scene for me, though I was perhaps a little impatient as I interrupted his explanation. Do you want me to heal him, then? That stopped him in his tracks as he looked up at me, wide-eyed with surprise. He stopped talking, looking extremely thoughtful as he picked up his glass of Everblack and swirled it around before sipping at it. He then looked up at me once more, and I got the feeling that he was trying to get a beat on me, not daring himself to hope for the best. So you're a healer too, as well as a fire mage? He asked curiously, nursing his drink a little more. I'm not really either, but I suppose I can heal in a way. No need to look at him, but I can certainly try, I offer as I sit forward again, resting my elbows on my knees. The dwarven man nodded intently before downing the rest of his Everblack, setting the crystal down before wiping his lips. Please, follow me, he said, as he gestured for me to come along before making his way out of the waiting room. He led us down the hall at first, going into what looked to be his office as he approached a painting on the wall. Instead of going for the painting, he pressed his hand against the wall below it and ran his manner through it when a click sounded out from the other side of his office. He then made his way over to a different panel in the wall, opening it and revealing a safe of some kind. He opened that using his manner as well, before reaching in and grabbing a pouch amongst other things. He locked everything up once more before walking up and placing 2 gold coins in my hands. Here, for the iron, he said before offering a bit of a smile. Now that our first deal is done, we can move on to other matters. If you'll let me take more of your time, he explained as he offered his hand. I couldn't help but smile before meeting his hand and giving an appropriate squeeze in response. Sure, it's a pleasure doing business with you. Though at that, I curiously looked over the gold coins before stashing them away in my storage. Looking back to Tilsom as he went around his office, he grabbed a dagger from a drawer and strapped it to his hip. He then walked up to the coat rack, grabbing what looked remarkably like a grey trench coat that's been sized down to his proportions, before also putting on a brown cloak over that. All those layers suddenly reminded me that we're in a part of the world that gets colder than the rest. Most people I've seen didn't wear all that many layers, though it could just be a matter of tolerances or even preference. So, what can you tell me about his symptoms? I asked as he fastened the cuff of his cloak. Tilsom looked thoughtful as he considered his words before looking back at me as he led me out of his office. It's the foul growth, he said, as if that would given me the whole answer. It might have for others, but so far that name is not ringing any bells in the memories I've absorbed. Well, statistically unlikely. I suppose that none of the people who have died to me or my beasts have encountered this foul growth disease. I don't want to make it obvious that I don't know what he's talking about, as I suppose it heater, so I'll just pay it off. That doesn't answer my question. What are his symptoms? Tilsom seemed reluctant to answer, and I could sense him remembering his last visit to the Crucible Master of his. It wasn't a pleasant memory, as far as I could tell, which was understandable. As we walked out through the foyer and exited the guild hall, we were greeted by a rather brisk night, the sun having now fully set by now. The streets were rather thoroughly illuminated by an array of enchanted crystal streetlights. As we walked past a few people here and there, I decided to give Tilsom an out for now, since we will see the guy soon enough anyway. What were you originally going to ask me to do? At that, Tilsom was more willing to speak as he glanced back up and ran his fingers through his beard. Well, I was hoping that you would be willing to take the Crucible Master's place for a short while. It'll take a while to train a replacement who could manage to replicate his skills and capabilities. And we're already very behind on orders for refined wolfram. We just don't have the people who could possibly match the heat of the flames he was able to maintain and withstand," he explained with a heavy sigh before leading us out past the gates. The guards at the gate watched us curiously, but made no attempts to really stop or approach us. Making our way through the city outside the walls, Tilsum pulled the hood of his cloak up, and I followed suit, just in case. In regards to his offer of work, I suppose I could help out with that. It would be something to keep busy tomorrow night, at least. "I'll think about it. First, let's tend to this Crucible Master of yours," I offered, as I flashed Tilsum a small smile. At merely offering to think about helping, I could sense a little ball of stress within Tilsum starting to unwind and relax. Before long, we stepped away from the main street, taking a path made with cobblestones rather than the smooth pavement we were walking on earlier. Even outside of the walls, the state of the outer town that was close to the walls looked significantly better than the buildings I first saw on the outskirts of the frontier town. General security was pretty decent too, as we walked past a pair of guards who were patrolling the neighborhood. Once more, they regarded us with vague curiosity, but upon recognizing the guildmaster, they simply moved on without a word. "You must have a lot of influence. The guards recognize you on sight and don't question you whatsoever," I mentioned it offhandedly while looking him over. Tilsum just chuckled softly as he shook his head. "That's just how things work around here. I'm a rank 3 elite, after all," he mused as he tapped the innocuous little badge that was on his coat collar. Now that he had mentioned it, I've seen a few of those badges here and there, even on the trio, but it didn't stand out to me before. "Forgive my ignorance, but what does that mean?" I asked curiously as I watched him. I don't remember learning about these from either Rita or Dahlia's memories, though I think I have a good idea of what this might entail, based on what Cecil told me earlier today. Tilsum looked vaguely surprised by the question, but then he remembered that I'm a traveller and just smiled a bit. "Ah, so you haven't been in this country before, right?" he said as he began to consider his words. "The only things that matter in this nation are might, merit, and money. How strong you are, how influential you are, and how much money you're able to field," he explained, counting the 3 M's on his fingers as we walked. "Rank 5s are the most common types of elites. There are merchants who are wealthy enough to own and maintain their own stores, or adventurers who manage to reach a rank of steel. They're granted a measure of trust and allowed to be more easily traverse the nation with little hassle. Being an elite opens doors and generally shows that you are someone who can be relied upon to get things done one way or another." "I see. And do elites abuse this power?" This is starting to sound like some sort of caste system, and I can't help but wonder about the people who aren't even considered elites. As we rounded a corner, Tilsum looked thoughtful before bobbing his head once. "There are people who let them term elite get to their heads and abuse the positions of power they earned. But with that in mind, there are just as many, if not more people, who take the roles they've earned rather seriously. It's not uncommon for an abusive or corrupt elite to be slaughtered by another elite for their transgressions. Again, might is very important here. If they were unable to protect their lives despite their actions, then they certainly weren't worthy enough to keep their rank or their lives." He then looked thoughtful once more before looking up at me. "Though once you get to those in rank 2, you'll find people who manage large territories of land, basically the equivalent to mayors and governors. Even then, if you met one rank 2, you've only met one rank 2. They're the highest rank most people can obtain and maintain, even with money and might being passed down." "So what about rank 1? I prompted as we rounded another corner. Tilsum bobbed his head as he regarded me again. "They are the ones who stand above all the elites. There are 5 of them who hold council, all of whom come from founding families. Said families have consistently maintained their might, merit, and money since the start of it all, supposedly with little shifting in overall power dynamic. There are only 5 official rank 1s. A single representative from each family is chosen to represent their house and guide the nation." We rounded yet another corner, before approaching the rather nice-looking two-story home with an iron fence and a yard. "If you want to know more, it'll have to wait. We're here," he mentioned, gesturing to the house before pushing a button by the gate as a buzzing ring sounded out. After a few moments, a young lizard-kin woman in her late teens peeked out through the curtain, before stepping out through the door with a small smile on her face as she crossed the yard. She looked more human than lizard to me. She had chestnut brown hair and vibrant red scales decorating her tan face in patches that reminded me of Ithilia. I felt she looked rather beautiful, despite the odd blend of mammalian and reptilian genetics. "Tilsum, what brings you by, and, she starts to say while looking at me. For a moment, I sensed she felt intimidated when she met my gaze, before quickly regaining her composure. "Who is this?" she asked as she looks back at Tilsum. As Tilsum went to speak, I decided to interrupt. There was just something about completely obscuring my identity not sitting quite right with me now that I'm here to actually help someone instead of trying to make a sale. "My name is Vito. Tilsum has asked me to take a look at his guild's crucible master," I explained as gently as I can manage. At that, her eyes went wide as she looked at Tilsum. Tilsum returned a surprised look with a smile. "May we come in?" he asked kindly. "Of course, please do come in," she said, as she stepped out of the way while opening the gate the rest of the way. After she shuts the gate behind us, she takes the lead again and opens the door to her home. Stepping inside, I could feel the cozy warmth coaxing through the air. The smell of food tickles my nose, and I can tell they just finished having dinner. While Tilsum and I pulled our hoods back, more people started coming over to see who was at the door. Before long, 2 young men are standing before me, hugging and shaking hands with Tilsum while giving me curious looks. Of the 2, the youngest, who was in his early teens, had more lizard-like features than his siblings, with sharper teeth, animalistic eyes, and even a tail. The eldest, who was possibly in his 20s, shared similar-looking features with his sister, patches of scales along his arms and face, though he too had reptilian eyes. Finally, a human woman came over. She looked to be in her late 30s, with chestnut brown hair and vibrant blue eyes, though they admittedly appeared dulled with exhaustion. Yet she managed to smile as she saw Tilsum. "Guildmaster Tilsum, so nice of you to pay a visit. To what do I owe the honor?" she asked pleasantly before regarding me curiously. Tilsum lowered his head politely before looking up to the matriarch of the household. "I apologize for coming unannounced. However, I brought someone who is willing to take a look at your husband's condition. He is a rather powerful mage and a skilled healer," he explained while regarding me. The woman looked me over, and I could sense the seed of hope in her heart. Yet she also looked very tired. She didn't dare let that seed blossom after seeing her husband deteriorate so much. "You look young, but I suppose it wouldn't hurt. All the other healers we've brought here have tried and failed to heal him. If you can do anything, at least alleviate his pain, I'll be forever in your debt," she said as she lowered her head. Alleviate his pain, huh? Damn, she's not even hoping for healing anymore. "I shall do my utmost. Now then, can you please take me to him?" I asked, as I shrugged my cloak over my own shoulder while absently adjusting my gloves to make sure they are on securely enough. Tilsum stayed behind, conversing with the children while the matriarch led me upstairs. We walked down the hall before going up to a door and stepping inside. Immediately, I met with the scent of herbal incense, a thin layer of smoke filling the room as the door is shut behind me. The matriarch walks over to the bed and settles on the chair beside it, and it's there that I see the crucible master. I stepped closely, gingerly pulling the covers back as I look over the lizardkin man. What was once shiny and vibrant red and orange scales were now dull and faded. His scales clung to his body tightly, as he appeared distinctly gaunt. "Does he eat often?" I asked, glancing over to the matriarch before continuing to look down at the man. Despite how emaciated he was, his stomach looked unnaturally swollen around his right side. The woman shook her head slowly. "Not often, no, and when he does eat, it's very little." I bobbed my head intently and continued my examination. Despite touching and slowly moving the man's limbs around as I need him to, he doesn't wake to stir. "He was awake earlier, talked with our children, and managed to eat some soup. He must have worn him out," she mentioned, as she stood and lovingly cradled her husband's scaled cheek, her thumb caressing his jawline. "I see," I say softly. With these symptoms, I could really be in any number of diseases. Yet they called it the foul growth. Could it be? There's nothing left for me to look at on the surface, so I decide to peer in closer. Pressing my hand down on his stomach, I close my eyes and start slowly running mana through him to examine him as thoroughly as I could manage, and it's not good. His mana heart is like a flickering candle, and the 2 mana rings he has looks like they are close to unraveling with how expended and weak they now are. His body is riddled with tumors, and his liver is the worst off. Foul growth is what they call cancer here. With all the magic in this world, how are they still dealing with cancer? Maybe they don't know how. But how wouldn't they know? I know they have an understanding of surgical practices, but, well, maybe it's only limited to repairing physical damage. Damn. How should I handle this? While he's in worse shape than Zazata when I rebuilt him, I know for a fact that I can probably heal this guy if I brute force this. But I can't keep doing that. I need to treat this guy to the best of my abilities without overwhelming force. I need to find a way that seems plausible for other mages and healers to use and develop. Well, maybe I can worry about the specifics later. For now, I could feel the matriarch's eyes steadily drilling into the side of my head as she watched me work. "Well, what do you think?" she asked in a low voice, as if to not wake her husband. I glance over at her before looking over the Crucible Master once more. "I can treat him, but I've never worked on someone this far along. It'll take time and, I'll need a bowl," I explain as I meet her gaze. She looked equal parts confused and yet hopeful as she quirks a brow at me, and I can tell I really threw her off as she took a minute to consider what I just said. "Hey, bowl?" End of chapter. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: DragonSoup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Sevaren Serberous, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Lightjock, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Lord Azrekahl. Thank you very much.